Monday night edition of the Anaheim Calling podcast. Jake, it's July 1st. You know what that means?
Free agent frenzy.
Day one of free agency has almost come and gone. It's just about 7 p.m. here, Pacific Standard Time. So there's still a little time left for some additional moves, but all the big names have been signed, with the exception of a few that we're still waiting on. We're going to get into all of that, the biggest moves of the day. But we're going to start with the Anaheim Ducks since we are a Ducks podcast. The Ducks, who are relatively, if not totally quiet today on day one of free agency, did not make any unrestricted free agent signings for their NHL club. Did make a couple of AHL moves, I believe, but really nothing of significance. The significance came yesterday. Now, significance is obviously a very, very relative term here, and that would be referring to the trade that sent a fourth-round pick from the Ducks for 2020 to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Nicolas Delauriers, who is a career fourth liner, is a forward for those who don't know. I'm assuming a lot of people might not know who he is. Had 2 goals and 3 assists last season in 48 games played for the Habs, played 58 games the season before, scored 10 goals, which could very well explain why he's signed to a deal that pays him $950,000 a year. He's a guy who is basically a lock to be a fourth liner. He literally has no other utility on an NHL roster. He's not a special teams guy. Is a guy, one of the last few players in the NHL who you could kind of consider an enforcer. Doesn't really fight all that often. Actually, I believe broke his hand or broke his wrist.
It was his jaw.
Broke something. Broke his jaw. That's correct. In pre-agency, in the preseason of last year.
I know more about a Montreal Canadien than you do. Feel shame.
Congratulations.
Feel shame.
And so anyway, all this to say that fighting has not worked out so well for him in recent years, but he is now a member of the Anaheim Ducks. And like I mentioned, there's really zero chance that he's going to be an AHL guy next year. I mean, a lot of people thought this was an AHL move, but he's kind of, zero chance might be too extreme.
I put it at 50-50.
I don't think it's 50-50 personally. But he's a guy who's pretty firmly just a fourth line guy. And I'm not really sure what kind of utility he has to an AHL team outside of just filling up a roster spot.
Yep.
So Jake, what do you make of the trade here? I kind of gave it away what I think, but what's your thoughts on it?
I hate it so much. I hate it so much. There's a lot of reasons why I despise this trade. And it's from a lot of different aspects. And basically all aspects are awful. So here's why. First off, the Ducks at this point in time should not be moving out picks unless they're acquiring an absolute difference maker. And yes, some people will go out and say, hey, it's only a 4th round pick. It's not a big deal. Whatever, something along those lines. But if you look in recent years and you look overall, those picks still have a chance to hit. You look at guys like Josh Manson, I believe, was drafted in the 5th round. Troy Terry, I believe, also in the 5th round. Sorry if those are actually off, but still, they're later round players. Let's go with that. Andre Kasha, also from a later round. So there are both hits and misses from rounds 3 through 7. But you don't want to be just moving those to move them, which is essentially what this deal feels like. If you're going to move your pick, you should be getting something back that's actually going to help you in the long term. And right now, with where the Ducks franchise is it's basically at the point where sorry, I'm actually frozen right now. But the Ducks franchise is actually at a point where they should not be moving out picks. They should be trying to stockpile them as much as they can, and basically doing what Montreal tried to do, or Montreal did with this trade, and that's bring in. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. So I don't necessarily agree with this. Should not just be moving out picks whatsoever.
Well, I don't necessarily mean
it's fine to move out a 4th round pick, because even though the Ducks have had success in the later rounds, it's not the likeliest that you're going to get an NHL player to that. But the reasoning is more, well, you shouldn't be moving out future assets if you're not really getting back anything that's valuable. And that's kind of what the Ducks did here. I mean, they added yet another forward to an already very long list of forwards. I mean, they currently have well above what they're going to need for next season on the NHL roster. So it really just leaves one to wonder what's the motivation behind this move, that they want to solidify a Dallas Eakins hard to play against fourth line. I don't know really what's going on here, but it's very possible that we have a fourth line next season in Anaheim of Derek Grant, Deslauriers, and maybe Nick Ritchie or Devin Shore or who knows. But that's a pretty traditional fourth line and not in the right sense of the word. So, and by the way, Deslauriers is set to make $950K regardless of if he's in the NHL or the AHL. So there's really no financial benefit for Anaheim to send him down to the minors. To me, that would indicate further that he's going to be playing in the NHL. I know a lot of people don't want that to happen, but that's where he's going to be. And just as more background here, Deslauriers, he's not, I guess you could do worse. I guess that there are worse players out there, but he just doesn't really add anything. I think that his scoring touch the year where he got this extension from the Canadiens was vastly due to shooting luck. And defensively, I mean, he's not a very fast skater. He's not very mobile. Really what you're paying him for is to basically finish his body checks and to occasionally fight and maybe, just maybe, score a goal every once in a while. His defensive acumen is really overstated in some of the underlying metrics. I think that a lot of that is just team effects. I don't think that that's at all what he's bringing to the table. The Canadiens' fourth line last season was actually one of their biggest weaknesses all season long. Basically, Claude Julien couldn't trust that fourth line to be out there even when the Canadiens were leading. And so I don't know. I wonder what the intel is on Deslauriers that made Bob Murray think, yeah, let's move out a pick to get this guy. It just seems really, really odd.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't have any words for it, to be honest. It's very, very frustrating to me, this move, because it's exactly what the Ducks shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't. I mean, we talked about it with Corey Perry. The reason why Corey Perry was bought out was due to the fact of essentially they wanted to clear out roster spots. And what this move does is essentially add a player that will block all the guys on that left-hand side. Corey Perry was bought out basically to open up spots on the right-hand side. Deslauriers comes in and fills in a spot on that left-hand side where they have Max Jones, where they have Max Comtois, where they have Devin Shore, where they have Rickard Rakell, where they have Nick Ritchie. So it doesn't make sense.
Well, that's the thing, is that, this obviously, if Comtois or Max Jones come out in the preseason and do what we expect them to do, which is take a step forward, there's nothing really precluding the Ducks from sending Deslauriers down or putting him on waivers. His presence alone is, because a lot of people were bemoaning the fact that, this is going to block the youngsters. And I don't really buy that if the youngsters come in and do what we expect them to do. This is maybe just more of an insurance policy. It's just the way that they did this is what's weird to me, right? It's just giving up, even if it's not even a C+ asset. It's a fourth round pick. Just to give up anything outside of cap space to acquire a guy like that is what's really odd about this. So maybe they will trade a forward, or maybe Rickard Rakell is going to go back to center, or maybe Devin Shore. Like, there's just so many different variables here that could be at play. Obviously, the roster might not be finished, probably isn't finished, but it's just odd to see a guy brought in where you have to give something up to get him. The Ducks could have literally plucked any fourth line forward from the pile today of free agents without giving up anything outside of cap space, and probably have gotten similar money, maybe a little bit more, but it's just odd. It's just very odd.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick, I did want to make mention for anyone watching the video version of this. My camera, for whatever reason, has frozen on me, and it is due to the fact somehow I got a phone call from Nordstrom during this, and it messed up my camera. So sorry about that, people. It's not exactly something I can fix in the middle of this, so just bear with us. There, you will only be able to see Felix's beautiful face on the stream. But getting back to it, I think that getting back to your point about this trade kind of happening and it not so much being for the AHL, the more I think about it, the more I kind of buy that, simply because you don't give up a 4th-round pick for a guy that's going to be in the AHL. That's someone that you can just kind of pick up from anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that if they wanted an AHL guy, they got them today, right? They just kind of picked them up off the pile. You don't give up something to bring a guy who you're just going to send out to the minors.
Yeah.
Now, if they want to do that, and this is the worst thing, is that let's say that Max Jones and Max Comtois or whoever just really shines on that left wing and carve out a spot, then you have to put Deslauriers through waivers to go down to the minors, and maybe it's unlikely maybe it's unlikely that he gets picked up. But if he does, then you basically just burned a 4th-round pick for absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And again, it's a 4th-round pick. I want to really caution the tone here that we're not talking about a 2nd rounder, a 3rd round, right? This is something that's a marginal asset, but it's an asset nonetheless. It's something you can use to attain value, to make your team better, to literally do anything besides bring in a 4th liner. And so if in the scenario that we mostly expect that Comtois and Jones come in and one of them shines, I mean, someone's going to be on the outs on this team, and no one is waiver exempt. And so if you have to send them down just to have adequate roster size, then losing Deslauriers or losing anyone to waivers here, you can almost directly trace it back to this trade. So it's not a great situation. It's really odd.
Yeah.
Now maybe Nick Ritchie, maybe Devin Shore, maybe someone gets traded within the next couple weeks and all of this makes sense again. But right now, we can only judge this trade based on the information that we have available, and this is what we've got.
Yep, because as of right now, this move essentially means that, we were talking about it before this move was made, but there's basically one spot for Max Comtois and Max Jones, so they're fighting it for one of that, or for that one spot. And
I don't think both of them are making the team next year, at least out of camp.
Well, and that's what I thought, honestly, before this trade was made. I thought only one of them was making the team out of camp. Now, do either of them make the team out of camp? Did you really just spend a 4th-round pick on a guy that's going to be in and out of your lineup? And I know there are going to be some people out there that are like, well, and I know I said this already, but, well, it's a 4th-round pick. Why are you guys making a big stink? But this is a guy who is an unrestricted free agent after this year, is going to probably play 50, 60 games, maybe, be in and out of the lineup, and you just wasted a potential future on him. It is. Yeah. I mean, here's the real question: does Nick Delauriers, or Nicolas, or however you pronounce his first name, Delauriers, make the Ducks a better team this year and in the future?
No.
What makes this? What is better for the franchise, having Deslauriers or the 4th-round pick? In my opinion,
very, very obviously the pick.
Yeah, there's no question, which is why this trade is so dumb. It's so dumb.
It's just very difficult to understand. Again, maybe there's a trade coming up that will solve all of this, that will make us understand. But even then, okay, let's just go that far. Let's say they do make a trade and they bring in another piece. This still doesn't really totally justify that.
No, because I mean that justifies the move in the sense of acquiring him. It's still a weird way to go about it, even if this move leads to another. It justifies bringing him in the sense of, well, there's a roster spot, so we're putting him in that roster spot, plugging in a hole. It doesn't make sense in terms of the return. And I think so.
It really doesn't.
Datadog in our Twitch stream kind of puts it like this: it's not a huge blunder, but it is a head scratcher, and I think that's probably the best way to put it.
That's really all I could come up with yesterday when the news broke. I was like, this is just weird.
Yeah.
There's just no other descriptor that I can come up with that's the most fair. Okay, let's move on from this trade. So let's zoom in on free agency here today. The Ducks stood on the sidelines. They did sign AHL playoff MVP Andrew Podorowski. That'll be my attempt at pronouncing his last name. He was the MVP of the playoffs for the Charlotte Checkers this past playoff season. Scored 70 points in 72 games last year for the Checkers. basically has been a staple in the AHL the last 3 years, has spent the majority of his professional career in the AHL, only has 2 NHL games to his name. At age 25, the likelihood of him making the NHL seems pretty low. If that's kind of where he's at, maybe what he's shown in the minors at 5'11" can maybe give him a look in the NHL. It feels very unlikely, but outside of that, that's all that the Ducks did, and so it was a very quiet day. So how do you feel about the Ducks staying away from the Anton Strawmans and some of the names that maybe we expected them to target here? What are your thoughts on that?
Anton Strawman made what, 5 times 5?
Yeah, he got a nice deal.
Which is
he got a nice deal for himself.
A very, very nice deal, and good on him. But yeah. I'm happy the Ducks stayed away from him. Honestly, I'm happy they did nothing. I know there are a lot of people that are out there saying just do something. The Ducks.
There was not a whole lot to be gained. I think, in this class.
The Ducks were the only team to not sign a player today for the NHL roster. And honestly, you look around and look at who was available, look at what they could have done. It's probably for the best because honestly, they had no space on the wings. Yes, obviously, somehow if you can bring in Artemi Panarin, he makes your team better. But for the most part, any of the guys that were available on the wing were not going to improve. I mean, let me rephrase this. They would improve the team, but they also would cause a major issue with this team moving forward, with having to basically cause a roadblock for this team. And quite frankly, a lot of the guys that were available today are guys that are kind of older and you're going to be overpaying. And essentially, they're guys that you want to get when you are contending. You can overpay for a guy and deal with the later years of that contract if you are trying to win now. Let's look at Dallas, for instance. Joe Pavelski, they gave him, 3 times 7? Is that right?
Yeah.
3 times 7. The third year of that deal may hurt them. Hurt them really badly. I mean, look at what's happened with Toronto with having...
But they're also in a different spot. We've talked about
but that's my point, is look at Toronto with Patrick Marleau. The third year got them. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, you can go through that third year and figure out a way around it, and you can basically stomach that by the fact of you're contending, and you need to win now. And let's be real. The Ducks are not a contending team next year. They are not in the Stanley Cup picture. They can rebound and make the playoffs, but they're not in the Stanley Cup picture right now, and they should not be spending money and term on these types of guys. The only type of player that I would have really liked to see them target is possibly a defenseman, but even then, there's a pretty fair amount of money tied up in the back end. And so, quite frankly, if I were to see the Ducks do anything, I prefer them, or would have preferred them, to make a trade of some sort to bring in someone for the blue line. But even then, I mean, we've talked about this a fair amount. This roster's pretty set. There's not really a whole lot of spots to be filled. Maybe on the blue line, maybe a little bit, but eventually I assume that Yanni Hakanpää will be announced. That will be possibly the only signing.
Interesting that he didn't get announced today. Wasn't today when that could have... Yeah, when that could have been, because basically if the deal's been agreed upon in principle, I guess it could have been signed today.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll never see Hakanpää.
Maybe
this was all just a hoax. The Hakanpää hoax.
Maybe. But regardless, I mean, so at forwards, we've gone over, but down the middle, they have Getzlaf, Steele, Henrique, Grant. On the wing, on the right wing, they've got Jakob Silfverberg, they got Andre Kasha, they got Troy Terry, and they also have they have Kiefer Sherwood and Daniel Sprong. On the left wing, they've got I've already mentioned these names, but Ricard Raquel, they've got Nick Ritchie, they've got Max Comtois, they've got Max Jones, they've got Carter Rowney, they've got Devin Shore, they've got now
Jake just mentioning the entire roster.
Deslauriers.
Thank you. Now I know who's on this team.
But my point is that these are all guys that are filling those roster spots. And so it's not as if there's an open hole that they need to go and get someone. And on defense may be the only spot because NHL established players, they have 3 of them on the back end in Fowler, Lindholm, Manson. Now, they also have Gooley, they also have Larson, and they also have Holzer signed and potentially Hakanpää. Those could be your 7 defensemen. So where is there space for them to bring in someone is my question.
Well, that's why we've been basically saying for the last few weeks that if there's going to be a significant change to this team, it'll be through a trade. because there's an excess of forwards, and there's definitely an excess of forwards now, and maybe there's some holes on the back end that you'd want to see filled. So last bit of news here, Ducks related. This isn't actually Ducks related, but it's former Ducks now. Jacob Megna signs a 1-year deal with the Vegas Golden Knights, so he leaves the Ducks organization. Sad to see him go, goals captain. And I thought that Jacob Megna is one of those guys who, I think we talked about this at the end of the season, but a guy who might do well with the different opportunities. Same goes for Andy Welinski, who also signed a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia Flyers today. And Jake Duchene signs a 1-year deal with the St. Louis Blues. So the San Diego Gulls blue line just kind of got annihilated today, and it's going to be interesting what they're going to look like next year. You have to imagine that Simon Benoit and Josh Mahura are going to have bigger roles next year. So that's definitely exciting.
Also, we should make mention, no announcement yet on if they're coming back or if they are signing elsewhere, but also as Group 6 UFAs are Kalle Kossila and Kevin Waugh. So they're both now unrestricted free agents, can sign anywhere. Also, Jake Duchene, I believe, signed in St. Louis.
Yeah, I just said that. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those guys. And then in addition to that, I do wonder if there's a market for like a Kalle Kossila, because he could fit onto a lot of teams as like an extra forward or a depth guy. But I feel like he might be kind of stuck in the AHL purgatory for now. So we'll just have to see there. Okay, so on the other side of our first break, we're going to get into some of the bigger deals that happened today on July 1st, opening day of free agency. So we will be right back. Okay, back from our first break here. Jake, what did you think of day one here, July 1st?
I thought it was entertaining. I think that there was.
Were you entertained?
That's
was. The key question.
I think there was a lot of movement, and there were a fair amount of players that switched teams, which is not what we typically get on July 1. We typically get a lot of the big guys pretty much staying where they're at and re-signing. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, that happened. I think that didn't happen. I think the only player that really stayed put, that was kind of a major player, was Anders Lee.
Yeah.
And then I think the other two things that kind of happened that were interesting were the Maple Leafs were moving, trying to clear out as much space as possible, and also bringing in defensemen and probably ending Jake Gardner's tenure as a Maple Leaf in the process. And the other thing is, offer sheets are alive.
Okay, so let's there's so much to talk about here. I can barely contain myself, but let's try to get through it here. So let's start with the signings. We'll then work our way to some trades, because there's been a couple trades here in the last couple days that are definitely, just so much to talk about there. So let's just kind of go through the bigger names. Should be pretty quick here. Artemi Panarin signs a monster 7-year, $81.494 million contract with an AAV of 11.6 a year with the New York Rangers. Jake, I think this was you and I's preferred destination for Artemi Panarin.
Oh, I wanted him in Florida.
Really? Oh, that's right.
I wanted him in Florida. I want him on the Panthers.
The Rangers, I feel like, is just so perfect because it's a big stage.
The Rangers I'm good with also.
It's a big stage. They've been doing the rebuild right. He kind of just falls into their lap, and he's a very good player who, at age 27, obviously that's a lot of money, but I think he's going to be worth it for at least 5 years.
So,
yeah.
That Rangers-Devils rivalry for the next couple of years.
Ooh, it just got spicy.
It's going to be so much fun. You've got
so
Panarin.
So many NBCSN matchups.
Panarin, Kakko, Zibanejad, Lundqvist, Trouba on one side. Other side, you've got Hall. You've got Jack Hughes. You've got Nico Hischier. You've got PK Subban.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
that's going to be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and it's a great rivalry too, because it's clearly built on skill and speed, and it's built on all the things that actually make the game enjoyable to watch. So, what do you think of the contract, though? Any comments there?
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of years.
It's the cost of doing business,
but it's what I expected.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I think it's what we all expected. My favorite thing, though, was last night, full court press by the Columbus Blue Jackets to let
Yeah.
everyone know that they offered
We
12.5.
tried.
Yeah, I mean,
We offered him 8 years. We used
I
our
think
leverage.
that was them wanting everyone else to know that because, of course, Panarin must have known about this offer months ago. I mean, this was always going to be the
Yeah.
card that they could play was that they had the extra year and the extra dollars. And guess what? It turns out that when you're making that much money a year, marginally more money doesn't really change a whole lot in your calculus, especially when it's, and this is meant without any disrespect, just thinking about it logically, especially when you're talking about a millionaire who could either live in New York City or Columbus, Ohio. I'm just saying that probably was a big reason why Panarin has gone out. Okay, moving on to another move that we have seen coming for a long time that was actually kind of reported last night. Matt Duchene signs a 7-year, $56 million contract at an $8 million a year AAV with the Nashville Predators. Jake, your thoughts?
I hate it. Well, okay, let me change that.
You hate it.
I don't
think
hate
8
it.
is actually less than what we expected.
Oh, no, it is less. I was expecting 10.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just
Yeah.
put it like this. I think it's Nashville not being very smart. They have way too much money tied up in their centers that essentially there's no way they're going to provide the value that they should because there's just too many of them. Kyle Turris is not going to be worth $6 million. Ryan Johansson probably is not going to be worth $8 million now with Matt Duchene there. And yeah, it's good to have three very good centers. The issue is when they take up that much money, it's hard to find value elsewhere, or it's hard to find guys that can basically put up numbers unless you have a guy coming up on an ELC. And last I checked, I don't think Nashville has an impact forward really coming up in their system, and that's kind of the biggest thing.
I guess, I'm blanking on his name right now. The Finnish
Eli Tolvanen
player. Yeah, Tolvanen.
That's
but
true.
He's kind of fizzled out.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
about it. Yeah, to your point.
So, yeah, that's my biggest issue with it is basically Matt Duchene's fine. He's a low-end first-line center, a high-end second-line center. I think that this is decent value based upon the open market, but overall, I just think that Nashville, the best place he could have gone would have been somewhere that had a first-line center and allowed him to become a second-line center. The issue with that is if you're getting $8 million, it's hard to find a place like that.
I think my issue with Duchene signing is that it's not so much the fit, because I think he fits in just into their lineup, but I think he doesn't totally address their needs in that their power play sucks, and he's not a great power play guy. Most of his points come at 5-on-5, even strength, and so that's maybe a product of some of the teams he's been on, but still a little concerning if I'm the Nashville Predators. Okay, it's one of those deals also that has been out there for so long that when it happened today, it was just kind of, okay, yeah, we knew that was going to happen. Another deal that came to a head last night, Joe Pavelski, you already mentioned it, 3 years, $21 million, $7 million a year to the Dallas Stars. I think we're both a little higher on this one than the Duchene signing.
Yeah, I think that this is a win-now move. It's a little bit of an overpay, but it's fine. I think that it's a good move I think it's a good move for Dallas. I think they're in a win-now mode. I think on our Patreon episode I said this, that they're kind of in a spot where the Ducks were 2 to 3 years ago, and they need to really kind of push all their chips in while Sagan and Ben are still in their prime. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that's the thing is that the Dallas Stars don't have any other options.
Yeah.
They can't just kind of coast it because they're totally locked into their core. So, yeah, I'm a fan of it. Pavelski's a very good player still. Definitely an overpay for what he is, what he's going to be. But, hey, I mean, like you said, they're in it to win it. Now, I think the deal that none of us expected, Matt Zuccarello signs a 5-year, $30 million deal with a $6 million AAV to the Minnesota Wild at age 31.
Yeah, what are they doing?
I did not. I kind of love just how insane this one is. This is probably the zaniest deal we saw on July 1st, maybe because there was no leaked reporting leading up to it like all the other deals. But, man, what the heck are the Wild doing, Jay?
I have no clue. And it's not even worth talking about, honestly, because no one has
Zuccarello is a good player.
No, he is, but
he
5
makes the
years is
Wild
way
better.
too much. 5 years is way too much.
5 years is too much. I think that Zuccarello took this deal because nobody else was probably offering it to him. I think that that's part of it.
Yep.
I have no way of knowing that, by the way. That's kind of the way I see it.
I guarantee you he probably only got 3-year offers max from other teams.
Zuccarello definitely makes this team better.
Yep.
Probably helps their playoff chances next year. Does not help their long-term prospects of eventually turning the page from Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. Although, as we talked about on our Patreon pod, I kind of said this jokingly, but I guess Paul Fenton maybe heard me. Maybe he has a burner Patreon subscriber account. I mentioned, hey, if you're so locked into these guys, might as well try to make the playoffs anyway. I think I said something like that. So
yeah,
keep
sure.
the playoff revenue coming in. I don't know.
Yeah, we should, while we were kind of talking about the Stars a little bit, we should mention. I know how you're kind of going down by AAV, but we should mention while we're there, Corey Perry signs with the Dallas Stars on a 1-year deal.
Shoot. Totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Yep. On a $1.5 million deal, or 1.5 mil, but it is, and this is something I did not exactly know until I heard it when I was listening to some podcasts over the weekend. But due to the fact that he only played, I think it was like under 100 days, or was on the roster for under 100 days, not being injured, he was allowed to, or he's allowed to have a contract that would be incentive bonus or incentivized, basically. So he can have performance bonuses.
Have you seen it?
I have not actually seen what the bonuses are.
I have it in front of me here. It was tweeted just not even an hour ago.
Awesome.
So from Frank Saravalli, Corey Perry bonus structure, $250K, 10 games played, $250K, 20 games played. So it's basically $250,000 for every 10 games played. And then it's $250,000 to make the playoffs and at least 50 games played. It's $100,000 if they win 3 rounds and he plays at least half the playoff games. And it's $150,000 if they win the Stanley Cup and he plays at least half the playoff games.
So it's all games played then.
Which makes me wonder, and this is something I floated out on Twitter, which maybe was a little irresponsible, I don't know. But I wonder, does it say something about the health of his knee? That everything is so locked into the games played?
It's interesting because I was expecting it to be like goal scored bonuses.
No, it's all just, can you stay healthy? That's literally all it's about.
Interesting. And 1-year deal. So at max, the value can get up to 3.25.
Yeah.
And also, really going back to Pavelski, he's a weird guy, or weird situation where he turns 35 in a couple days, or in like 10, 15 days. So technically this is not considered an over 35 contract.
Which is good for the Dallas Stars,
yes.
If they ever need to cut ties.
For those that don't know, if it's an over 35 contract, if you buy it out, you do not essentially you cannot make up any of the money.
No cap relief.
No cap relief, and I believe no money relief either.
Well, so let's kind of hone in on Perry here a little bit. So how do you feel about Corey Perry being a member of the Dallas Stars?
It hurts. I
can't believe I blanked on that, by the way. I'm really ashamed as someone who does a Ducks podcast.
You should be.
I'm going to bear the brunt here, although Jake could have easily chimed in earlier. But
I tried, and you just went to Zuccarello. I was like, I guess we'll go with this.
But Corey Perry's a Dallas Star. That's a weird sentence, but what do you make of it?
It's weird. You sending me that picture in text message form really was weird to see Perry in a Dallas Stars jersey. After all the years of, especially mid-2000s where the Ducks and Stars were in the same division, it's definitely going to be weird. But, you look at the places that he was possibly going to go. I actually am good with him going to Dallas because I think that they are a team that has a chance to do kind of big things next year. I think he's someone that can really help them in a couple of different ways. And so I think overall it's a pretty good fit from both a Perry perspective and from the Stars perspective. And so I think overall from him and his agent, it makes a lot of sense. And he knows the Western Conference. He knows kind of the rigors of the travel and everything. So it's going to be weird. And I don't know if you saw this, but essentially if he starts the season and plays in every game to start the year, his 1,000th game is going to be against the Ducks.
Ooh. Okay, so
in Dallas, though.
Yeah, still, that would be something. I'm sure he'd be motivated for that. Two things that I've got here. One is I think it's a great fit with the Stars. It's just another forward that, if healthy, they can just throw at the other team when Sagan and Ben or Radulov aren't on the ice. So to me, that just makes total sense. And the idea of having Radulov and Corey Perry out on the ice, I know it's not prime Corey Perry, but the level of potential just instigating that could happen there, just stirring the pot, could be real interesting. But if I asked you, how many games do you think Corey Perry is going to play next year? If I set the over-under at maybe, I don't know, 62 and a half, how many games do you think he's going to play? Because I'm starting to think that if they structure it that way,
I say 60.
I think he's going to miss some time next year. I mean,
60.
there's just no way he's fully back. 60?
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking the under?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna be right there with you. Anything else on Corey Perry?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so let's just kind of power through these last few signings here. Wayne Simmons, 1-year deal, $5 million a year to the New Jersey Devils. Gotta love that for the Devils.
Prove it deal. Oh yeah, another player to kind of get his get into that rivalry. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. You add in the fact that Devils and Flyers kind of have a bit of a rivalry with one another. So that's gonna make that a little bit interesting, seeing as he was with the Flyers for so long. But yeah, I mean, I like this deal from a Flyers perspective. It definitely feels like they're cashing in on a bit of kind of the reputation drop that Simmons had during his time in Nashville.
And it's 1 year.
Yeah, so low risk, potential high reward. I'm good with it.
Yep. And now moving on here, Sergei Bobrovsky, 7 years times 10, $70 million, as everyone expected, to the Florida Panthers.
Yep, a lot of money, a lot of years. I don't like I'm all good with goaltenders getting paid in terms of money or in terms of money per year. It's term that I have issue with goalies. Term is what usually will come to back to bite you, because that means they have to stay healthy for that entire time. And it's not as if you can hide them as they start to age. And so that's my only concern. But it's kind of funny. We talked about this a bit in our Slack chat last night with Justin. How he was kind of saying, why would you go and sign Sergei Bobrovsky to this deal when you just drafted a goaltender with your first round pick? And to me, it actually kind of sets up perfectly. And if you're going to draft a goaltender in the first round, which I don't exactly agree with, but if you're going to do it, this is kind of what you should do. You should find a goalie that will be your goalie for the next 7 years, which is give or take around the amount of time it takes for a goaltender to fully develop into a starting goalie. I mean, look at John Gibson. He probably wasn't fully ready until his age, probably 24, 25 season. The Bobrovsky contract is going to expire when Spencer Knight is 25. So he's going to be able to come in, if he's ready, around 23, if he develops properly and everything, be the backup on an entry-level deal to Bobrovsky, and eventually start to kind of take over and lessen the load while he's still on a Panthers-friendly deal. And then once Bobrovsky's deal is up, Spencer Knight will be ready for an upgrade in contract, and he will be making the big bucks. And so it actually kind of structures itself out really well. And I don't know if the Panthers did this on purpose, but it really actually is kind of smart, really, really smart by them.
Yeah, I think both guys kind of offset each other in a way. So if Bobrovsky doesn't pan out, you still have the possibility of Knight. And if Knight doesn't pan out, well, then you still have Bobrovsky there. If neither works out, then I don't know. Speaking of goalies, though, before we head into our second break, let's just kind of power through these. So Semyon Varlamov, 4 times 5 to the New York Islanders.
Why 4 years?
Which means, it's a little odd.
Why would you give Varlamov 4 years?
Well, especially considering that they basically just cut ties with Robin Leonard, who is at 1 times 5 to Chicago.
Well, did you hear that? Yeah, it was on their end that they basically gave him an ultimatum, and then they cut ties with him.
It reeks of something off ice.
It reeks of Lamoriello trying to control the narrative, and Leonard was a UFA.
So. I mean, the irony is that if there was anything with Leonard regarding off ice, I mean, you're bringing Semyon Varlamov, who, let's just say, his off ice resume is not the most squeaky clean either.
True.
So anyway, I mean, that's all just, I have no idea if that's just me spitballing here. Now, maybe my favorite goalie signing of the day, in terms of how bad it is, Mike Smith to the Oilers. I mean, what the heck? I know it's a 1-year deal for $2 million, and it's not really going to it's just like, should Connor McDavid just request a trade now?
I mean, how? Here's the interesting thing: is
Like, why?
Mike Smith actually has good seasons. Granted, he's old.
He has good seasons. Yes, he has good seasons. That's
old,
the best way to put it.
Although he is old now. How old?
He can occasionally not be terrible. He's over 35.
Yeah, so he's
37.
Yeah, he's pretty old now. That's kind of the main issue, but he's definitely gonna see a lot of shots while he's there. We can probably say that and make that a guarantee. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I guess
especially after the season he had, because you're right, he has had good seasons, but before last year, 916 in Calgary, 914, 916 in Arizona, but I mean, at his age, with that season he just had, you could have done anything else but sign him.
I guess. I mean, here's the.
You have him and Koskinen. That's your tandem.
Well,
that's the tandem that's going to guide Connor McDavid back to the playoffs.
Here's the real issue. Even if they wanted to go get a guy like a Robin Lehner, I don't think they can afford to spend $5 million on a goalie when they have Mikko Koskinen sign for 3 more years at 4.5.
He's the starter. He's the de facto starter.
Like, I mean, I guess technically now that I'm looking at it, they have a 22-man roster and they still have 3.9 in cap space. So if they would have signed Leonard, then they would have been right up against the cap. But you kind of want a little bit of space. I mean, they also bought out Sekera at 2.5 for the next 2 years and 1.5.
Okay, so
that team is such a train wreck.
Yeah, water is wet. The Oilers are weird. Okay, we'll be right back here from our second break. Okay, now let's kind of wrap up the discussion here on free agents. Another one, couple little quick hitters here that I thought were sneaky good deals. Jonas Donskoy, 4 times 3.9. Term might not be so great, but to Colorado, I think he's a guy who kind of makes them better just depth-wise. 4 times 3.25 for Brett Connolly to Florida. Again, term isn't great, but I think he's a guy who makes them better. Richard Panik to the Washington Capitals is another one that I do like, even if it's 4 times 2.75. And then Gus Nyquist to the Columbus Blue Jackets for another 4-year term at 5.5. That one's a little higher, but he is a pretty good player. So any of those you want to touch on here?
Not fully. The one that I do want to touch on really quickly before we start getting into some trades is the move that your favorite team made today.
Okay, so we're jumping into that? Okay.
We're jumping into the offer sheet.
Let's just do it.
Let's go.
Let's just do it. I'm ready for this. My body is ready.
All right. I'm going to talk first on this one.
Go for it.
All right. So basically, for those of you that are out there that don't know, the Montreal Canadiens signed, and Sebastian Aho signed an offer sheet with the Canadiens for a contract of 5 years, and I'm trying to pull it up really quickly as I'm trying to find it.
It's a 5 years, $42.2 million deal.
$42.2 million deal coming out to $8.454 million a year. And the interesting thing there is if it would have been, I believe it's like $200 or $300 more, that would have required a first round, a second round, a third round, and an additional first round pick. Due to the fact that it was as low, or the $200 cheaper than that, it's only a first, second, and third. So it's right underneath the threshold that would have required an extra first round pick. That obviously was not a coincidence. That was done on purpose. And then you also factor in that the Montreal Canadiens made it very signing bonus heavy and very front loaded. So it's 8.454 as the average annual value and the cap hit. The first year he's going to be making $12 million. 11.3 of that will be in signing bonuses. The second year will be 9.87 in signing bonuses. The third year, 6.9. The fourth year, 5.25, and the fifth year, 5.25. Essentially meaning his base salary each year is only around $700K, but he's making all of the money up in signing bonuses. And for those of you that don't know, signing bonuses are paid out every July 1st. So once it's decided whether the Hurricanes match this or whether they decide not to, he gets paid $11.3 million right now. And then next July 1, he gets paid $9.87 million. And so that's kind of how that works. And so this is a deal that, albeit on the surface, may not look like a lot at being only 5 times 8.454, and it may be something where it's an easy match. And granted, it is possibly just an easy match for Carolina. But Montreal really structured this in a way to really, I think, make the Hurricanes think about this. Because Dundon has made it clear, and this was said on the 31 Thoughts podcast, that essentially Dundon doesn't like to come down from what he sets as the value for someone. So if $11.3 million is more than the value that he believes Aho is worth, he may balk at actually giving him that money, because that's a check that he has to write once this is signed. So yes, most likely the Hurricanes match, but I can see a scenario where they don't. And I think that's the best part of this offer sheet right here. And I think, yes, any team can go out and offer a guy $12 million and go for that offer sheet, and then you have to give up all the first-round picks. But this is a very smartly structured offer sheet to attempt to get a player without having to give up a significant amount of draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to go from here, but just so everyone kind of has an idea, Sebastian Aho is, I mean, he's a young player at only age, 21, and he had 83 points last season, 82 games. Again, very young, age 21. Season before that, 65 points in 78 games. So he's a guy who's already on the rise, who is a first-line center. A lot of people talk about him as a potential first-line center. No, he is a first-line center. He is very good, to use our simple yet effective terminology here on the podcast. And so this is a gamble worth taking. Now, there's already been a war of words between the two GMs, who are actually good buddies, Don Waddell and Mark Bergevin. Don Waddell saying, "Oh, I'm surprised that it wasn't more of an offer sheet or more money," then kind of just laughing it off, saying that they'll match it right away. The Carolina Hurricanes Twitter having fun with it, and then Mark Bergevin just clapping back, saying Sebastian Aho wants to be a Montreal Canadian. Yeah. He signed this offer sheet. So this is exactly what we signed up for with the offer sheet theater.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with the offer sheet is a lot of people are like, why that's so below market value and all this different stuff. Why would Montreal?
Is it though? Is it?
Well,
that much below market?
Well, I think that people are like, why would Montreal offer him that deal? And the thing that people have to realize is he signed the deal. It's not as if you just give an offer sheet and then it's willed into existence. Sebastian Aho has to put his pen to paper to make this a thing. And so Aho was good with this amount being his AAV. And one thing else to keep in mind, I believe if it was a 4-year deal, it would have, I believe 4-year also would have put him at a UFA status, because that would have been 7 years in the league. But essentially this contract's going to expire with him being a UFA.
Well, so that's the thing, Jake. That's another thing to consider here. So everyone's dismissing it as saying that the Hurricanes are just going to insta match it. Now, there's also talk that, well, they could use up the whole 7 days that they have to match it, which would kill the Canadiens' ability to be active players in free agency. I don't really totally buy that, because I think that if they knew they were striking out on a guy like Matt Duchene, that was going to be kind of it for their shopping. There wasn't really another big target. And so this is kind of a plan B or a plan A1, whatever you want to call it. But the Canadiens can still use their remaining cap space, which is about $3 million, to make other deals. But they can't use the offer sheet cap space during those 7 days. So it's not people saying, oh, well, the Hurricanes could just troll them and sit on this for 7 days and let the market dry up. That's not. Yeah. I think that's kind of missing the bigger picture. Now, the other thing that go ahead.
I was going to say, you don't give this offer sheet if you have one of those deals lined up and you think that you're in on it. This deal comes out if you
exhausted your options.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting, though, and I'm glad you brought up the UFA thing, is that for the Hurricanes, this is a team that struggles to, I think with players giving them the dollar amount that they're really looking for. I think that's part of the reason why Justin Falk's probably going to be gone from there. And so not only is this a big deal that they have to pay now, but also they're not buying any UFA years with this. Because to me, if I'm the Hurricanes, a big part of my offer would have been, can we buy up? Can we get him on 6 or 7 years, right? Because that makes more sense from their perspective to buy up some of those years and not have to worry about re-signing him when he turns 26, 27. So the Canadiens, this is a big-time poison pill, I think, that they're throwing at them. Now, it doesn't mean that this is going to ruin the Hurricanes' long-term chances because they could easily just match it and just deal with the consequences. But this is a serious offer sheet. I mean, this.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I'm going to admit I'm just 1,000% biased, but I think that there's a distinct possibility that they don't match this offer sheet because Tom Dundon could just say, yeah, you know what, maybe Sebastian Aho isn't the guy that we just write a $11 million check to on one day.
Yep. Also, for those of you out there that kind of are newer to hockey and listening to us and wondering why this is such a big deal, us talking about an offer sheet, there hasn't been an offer sheet since, what would that have been?
It's been a while. It's
2011,
been a few years.
2012?
Yeah.
When Shea Weber was offer sheeted by Philadelphia. And I believe the last and only successful offer sheet I can really remember would have been Dustin Penner when he was offer sheeted by Edmonton when he was with the Ducks. And the Ducks were not able to match because they did not have the salary cap space. And that was when Brian Burke wanted to fight Kevin Lowe in a barn over it.
But it's very rare that these don't get matched. I mean, even Shea Weber's insane offer sheet from the Flyers did get matched by the Nashville Predators. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Historically, these pretty much always get matched. But this is kind of a unique circumstance. And I don't know. In addition to that, what I find interesting is that the fact that, Aho signed this, I don't necessarily mean that means necessarily he wants to go to the Canadiens. It means that he wants what he's worth now. This is a player-friendly contract, in my opinion. It's extremely player-friendly. And so if you're the Hurricanes, this doesn't really look well on your side because it shows maybe you haven't been that forthright with an offer. If they had been working on a contract in the last week and had been making actual progress, I'm sure the intel would have been floating around the league and you don't get this offer sheet. The reason you throw out an offer sheet is because you sense maybe there's a little weakness or a little lack of communication or trust between those two parties. So to me, and again, this is something that I mentioned earlier today in our little chat, that I think that there's no risk here for the Canadiens because at worst it gets matched and whatever. Yeah. And maybe you don't get invited to the golf outing with Don Waddell later in the summer, like whatever.
And the other thing is
the goal here is to make your team better.
And the other thing is this wasn't him. I think the other thing here is Marc Bergevin wasn't grossly overpaying him where it's going to screw up Carolina's cap moving forward. It's not as if this was done where you can look at it and it's him being vindictive against Don Waddell.
It's a real offer.
It's a real offer that's structured in a way that potentially won't get matched. And I think that's something that if you're a general manager, even if you're Don Waddell and maybe not too happy about your guy getting offer sheeted, but you look at him and be like, all right, this was still like done in a way that was meant to, that was not done to just try and screw us over.
Mm-hmm.
If we accept this, it's fair, and I think that's kind of key. And I think it's
fair, but it's definitely player friendly, and I think that's what they might not like. It's like okay, Mark, you just basically tilted the scales all the way in the player's favor.
I mean, because now no matter what, 7 days from now at the absolute latest, Sebastian Aho gets $11.3 million.
Oh, man. I would be so happy if I were him right now. I'd be, thank you, Marc Bergevin.
Yeah.
Well, hey, as a Habs fan, I'm just going to say it. I really hope this works out because the idea of Sebastian Aho, Phil Deno, Kotkaniemi as my center lineup, oh, boy. Oh, baby. Give it to me. All right.
Let's jump into some trades.
Yeah, let's move on to the trades here. So the trade that broke over the weekend, Phil Kessel, long rumored, long linked to Rick Tocchet and the Arizona Coyotes, is indeed out of Pittsburgh in exchange for Alex Galchenyuk, couple of throw-in minor league prospects and a 4th-round pick. I mean, those are all just kind of filler as part of this deal. But the real deal, it's pretty much a player-for-player deal. So Kessel goes to Arizona, Galchenyuk goes to Pittsburgh. Jake, what's going on here?
It feels like Kessel wanted out and wanted to rejoin Rick Tocchet, who is a guy that he credits with kind of evolving his game when he got to Pittsburgh. It also feels like it's Pittsburgh wanting to kind of move out and get some more cap space and maybe get a little bit younger in the process. Phil Kessel is on the wrong side of 30, so they were able to get him out, bringing in a guy, an Alex Galchenyuk, who, granted, is a UFA or RFA. I believe RFA at the end of this year. Let me double check.
He's at the end of his bridge deal.
No, he's a UFA at the end of this year.
Ooh, there we go.
So basically, this is a prove it type deal for him, and so the Coyotes get out a guy who really kind of had a little bit of an underwhelming season that they kind of took a big risk on getting a guy that will, and now getting Kessel, a guy that will score goals for them, and it's more of a certainty that he will be good, and getting rid of that uncertainty. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, gets rid of the additional cap hit that they want to try to clear out and get someone who could be a risk, and it's kind of, you're buying a bit low, but they could see the benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Galchenyuk is still only 25. I mean, he's definitely getting to the point where he just kind of is what he's going to be. But he's really only one big season away, in my opinion, from restoring his value.
Yeah.
If you look at the past season, he had missed 10 games, did suffer an injury, but put up 19 goals and 22 assists. It's a respectable season. I am quite surprised that the Coyotes gave up on him after one season, considering that they did give up Max Domi to attain him. So this deal basically becomes Max Domi for Phil Kessel, which is interesting to me. Now, Galchenyuk did score 30 goals when he was only 21. So clearly, if you're able to do that, there's probably something there. He is a very good power play player. I think he's a guy who's going to be really good for Pittsburgh and is going to make their power play better. Yep. And I think Phil Kessel is exactly what Arizona needed, just a guy who can create offense. So it's kind of a win-win deal. I think this kind of works out for both sides. I'm just a little surprised Galchenyuk was the piece that was going back. But I guess it all makes sense with the 1 year left. 1 year left on the deal.
Yep.
Jeez, words are hard today.
Yep.
Okay, another deal involving a former Canadian now, Andrew Shaw, going back to Chicago for a second in 2020, a seventh in 2020, and a third in 2021.
Montreal wins this deal.
Yeah, well,
Easy.
They created the cap space that we realized they were going to use now to obtain Sebastian Aho, which is definitely the positive example of creating cap space to then use it in a smart way.
Yep, and also Andrew Shaw is not. You were trying to make the argument that he's fine.
I mean, I don't think it's a debate. He is a good player. He's a second line winger. I mean, I'm not trying to say he's an all-star, but he's a good player. He's a guy who's going to make the Chicago Blackhawks better next year. It's a little odd, though. I think just big picture perspective, it's just weird that they would give up future assets when clearly they're kind of in a rebuild or a retool. But Andrew Shaw, I guess he's a guy who's not sold yet, who it's so obvious that you're bringing in a veteran, but he's also kind of a known commodity at this point. So I don't really know what to make of it from the Blackhawks perspective, but as a Canadiens fan, I will just happily smile. Right next to that trade, by the way, on the trade tracker is the Deslauriers trade. So Canadiens getting a bunch of picks this weekend. I'm happy. Now, the biggest trade, though, and one that I haven't – do you want to talk about Zaitsev and Ceci? Because I don't.
It's a salary dump by Toronto.
It's a weird one. Let's just put it that way. But the biggest trade, in my opinion, that we've seen –
Jimmy Vesey for a third?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. By the way, really quickly before we get into the other trade that's much bigger, seeing Jimmy Vesey get moved for a third-round pick today,
it's everything.
I got so mad that the Ducks spent a fourth on Deslauriers.
That's
when
true.
When Vesey cost a third. Compare the two players. Yeah. There is no comparison. I got just very, very angry.
Is Jimmy Vesey any good?
He's better than Deslauriers.
VC Watch has been firmly turned off since he joined the league. Basically,
let's see.
Okay,
he put up 35 points last year.
Yeah, that's definitely more than Nick Deslauriers.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, the biggest trade of the day, though, and of the last few days, it finally happened. Nazem Kadri and Tyson Barrie were both traded from their respective teams. They who have been in the rumor mill, it just seems like in perpetuity for the last year. So Tyson Barrie goes to Toronto along with Alex Kerfoot and a 2026 rounder. Nazem Kadri, Callie Rosen, and a 2020 third rounder go to Colorado. So there's a whole lot going on here, Jake. How do you unpack this?
So it's interesting. A lot of people instantly were like, "This is a huge win for the Leafs," because the Avalanche also retained 50% of Tyson Barrie's salary, and they got a younger player in Alexander Kerfoot as compared to Nazem Kadri, can play a little bit of a similar role. Will probably help out the power play a little bit. Callie Rosen, on the other hand, let
me ask you this.
I honestly don't know a whole lot about Callie
I just
Rosen.
want to butt in. I want to butt in here really quickly. Who's the best player in this trade?
Ooh.
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah, whether it's Barrie or Kadri. I guess Barrie, maybe?
I think it's Kadri. I think it's Kadri. Could be wrong about that.
Maybe. It's a little bit of a push, and I think you look at what both sides got, though. The Maple Leafs got a guy at a cheaper salary. They ended up gaining $2.5 million cap space. They got Tyson Barrie, I believe, is a right-hand shot. Yep, right-hand shot defenseman, which the Maple Leafs have been looking for a while, to be able to be paired with Morgan Rielly. And so they get that right-hand shot defenseman. The downside to Tyson Barrie is he's only signed for this season, so he is UFA. Yeah. So this trade could kind of the Leafs could be left with basically nothing next offseason if Kerfoot. I mean, he's RFA right now, so he should still be there. But realistically, they got a guy who is currently a UFA next summer and a guy who is a restricted free agent right now. And the Avalanche got a guy who is under contract for next season and 2 more seasons after that. And that is a depth center, also a second-line, third-line center, which is exactly what the Avalanche needed.
It's a glove-like fit. And, we talked about this
for both teams.
We talked about this on the Patreon pod, but I think this is exactly the kind of aggressiveness I wanted to see from the Avalanche, where you're not necessarily going broke and just spending money, but you're making moves that are going to help you now, and you're not really sacrificing a whole lot. I mean, I think giving up Kerfoot hurts a little bit because I think there was something there, but Tyson Barrie was a goner. He's probably a little overvalued on the trade market, and Kadri is a guy who just instantly comes in and gives them much more roster flexibility. You can feel a lot more confident about those minutes when McKinnon isn't on the ice. That's really all they kind of have to do this offseason.
They basically at this point swapped Carl Soderberg for Nazem Kadri,
which is an upgrade.
Yes,
I think we can definitely agree on that.
And so down the middle. With them also signing Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who's a good fourth-line center. Down the middle, they're pretty good right now. They've got Nathan McKinnon, Nazem Kadri, Colin Wilson, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare.
Yeah,
and they have Tyson Jost still.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that the Avalanche have had a quietly strong offseason where they didn't splurge on any of the big names, but they did bring in Nazem Kadri, Jonas Donskoy, and Bellemare and Andre Burakovsky. So that's 4 guys who, maybe there's a little uncertainty with Burakovsky. Bellemare is clearly a depth player, but Kadri and Donskoy definitely make them better. And I think if Bellemare is up to his role and Burakovsky can kind of resuscitate his career a little bit, they're a better team for all these moves. I think it's pretty unequivocal.
And also, I forgot to mention, they do have JT Compher also, who put up 32 points last season for him and is an RFA. So
that's the thing. Giving up Kerfoot doesn't hurt quite as much because you have Compher.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch next year. So, yep.
Yeah, it's exciting. I could go on for another hour here, but we just crossed the hour threshold. And so I think it's time to start wrapping up. Anything else? Any other takeaways from free agency?
You want to get into questions? We got 2 questions. Or it's kind of one long question from Varluna. Asked, thoughts on Leonard going to Chicago, and what does it mean for Crawford?
I don't think it really means anything in a negative fashion because it's a 1-year deal. So I think this is kind of a prove-it deal, which is really odd considering that Leonard was just a candidate for the Vezina Trophy.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Corey Crawford is also a UFA next offseason. And so what does it mean for Corey Crawford? I mean, I could see both of them getting re-signed after this offseason. So I don't necessarily think that this means Corey Crawford is just done. I mean, if we know anything about the Blackhawks, Jake, is that they love to pay their veterans or bring them back after having already traded them.
So Bonnie had a question. from way back when we were talking about Deslauriers, talking about the 4th round pick, basically saying, but why do they want the 4th round pick when they have all of the babies in the pipeline to add another baby in the 4th round? That was a question. And then if they don't think they score highly this season, wouldn't they have a higher round pick and they can trade this pick? So I think what Bonnie's kind of trying to get at here is essentially
the pick isn't so valuable.
Yeah, and
which we agree on, by the way. It's just what you got for it.
And I think the value comparison between the 4th round pick and Deslauriers, it's not exactly a comparable between the two. Bonnie also just threw in our Twitch chat, which is something that is interesting. The Golden Knights are looking to trade Nikita Gusev. Yeah. Because they are far apart in negotiations. We actually mentioned this, I think, so for those of you listening that aren't patrons, we did a Patreon series breaking down every single division in the NHL and what the off-season plan should be. And I can remember looking at the Vegas Golden Knights when we looked at them and being like, Nikita Gusev might not be long for Vegas, especially if he wants an upgrade in that paycheck, because he was one of the top players in the KHL, and how is that going to translate into his negotiations in the NHL? And obviously they're far apart.
He has been linked to Montreal, just saying.
Interesting. I mean, the Ducks notoriously do not get Russians, but he's worth a flyer. They were looking at getting Shipachyov.
True. I mean, at this point, I'm not even factoring in the fact that the Ducks have all these forwards because they just went in and got another one, and they re-signed Derek Grant. So, bring on another forward.
They shouldn't be, but who knows?
Get all the forwards.
Who knows?
This point. Just have 20 forwards on your roster.
Really quickly, on a bit of a somber note, kind of outside of hockey, I did want to say really sad news today for all Angels fans out there. Tyler Skaggs passed away. I know it's not exactly relevant to the Ducks, but wanted to briefly bring it up because it's been really kind of sad going through the timeline, seeing everything. I mean, I've watched the Angels since Skaggs came into baseball, and so really sad. Passed away, same age as me, 27. He's going to be 28. So just wanted to briefly say rest in peace, and thoughts. Everything are with the Angels, with his wife, with his family.
Yeah, that's just a crusher, gut punch. Hopefully, everyone's going to be okay. We don't know anything about it yet. Nope. Really, there's no signs of foul play as reported by the police department. But
I just know a lot of you listeners are probably Angels fans also, so wanted to mention that.
Just sucks. Okay, well, on that note, let's start wrapping things up here. So, Jake, how can people support the show? How can people help us keep this thing going here?
So there's a couple different ways you can support us. First off, if you've been listening to this, we do a live stream of the show on Twitch each and every time at twitch.tv/acpod, where you can become a subscriber to the show that's in a way that's completely free to you. If you have Amazon Prime, then you do have Twitch Prime. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button every 30 days, and it helps out significantly. You get a special badge next to your name. You get special emotes in the chat. I will be updating those over summer to get you more up-to-date emotes, because we don't need a Randy Carlyle one anymore. We don't need a Jack Hughes one anymore either.
Aren't you happy about one of those two?
Sure. Yes, definitely. And so that's one way you can support us. The other way you can support us is by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/acpod. You can support us there at $1 a month. You're basically supporting the show and get access to our subscriber-only or patron-only Discord chat. And then at $5 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes a month. Our subscribers, or our series this past 2 months, was actually really fun to do, and we got some really long episodes out of it in the hour and a half to 2 hour range. And so go check it out. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And of course, make sure to check us out on the Apple Podcast app. Leave a rating and a review if you enjoy the show. We love to hear from you guys, hear what you have to say about the show, what we're doing right, or what we could improve on. I think it's always healthy to hear both sides. We really do appreciate the people who have left reviews. And like I said, just search Anaheim Calling on the Apple Podcast app. And we're on pretty much every podcasting platform. So if you're on Spotify, we're not on SoundCloud, but if you're on Spotify, Stitcher, all of the above,
Google Play,
we're on there. Google Play. So definitely.
Yell at
And
me.
if you enjoy the show and you're just kind of a big fan or a moderate fan, above league average fan, whatever you want to call it, tell a friend, tell someone who might be interested. Word of
Yes.
mouth is way more powerful than just about anything. It's the biggest marketing tool there is. So if
Oh,
you enjoy the show, just tell a friend who might be
I
interested.
did want to make mention that yesterday at 11:30 we had our pickup game over at the Great Parks Ice, and it was a really good time. Both Felix and I scored, and so
Yeah.
we're gonna be looking
Jake
to,
scored a highlight reel breakaway goal, I should add.
sometimes.
Give yourself a little more credit there.
I know,
Yeah, bro. And I'll describe it like I do on our recaps. But Jake basically, I think, got a pass through the neutral zone.
No,
And he's a righty,
I got the puck in the defensive zone and carried it out.
so he carried it out, enters the offensive zone on his backhand, and then gets all the way to the front. And as he's getting tripped, as he's falling, goes to his forehand and just tucks it in far side. Ends up on his back, but you can see him fist pumping from being in a prone position on the ice. It was pretty awesome.
I did
Great to see.
I did a snow angel. Got to go all out with the celly.
It was pretty great. It was a good time. We appreciate everyone who came out. It was a lot of fun. Pictures. I think there were some pictures from the game. They should be out sometime this week. So if you were part of the event, we'll be sure to get those out there.
We definitely are going to be doing more in the future. They're always a blast to do. So if
you're in the Orange County, Southern California area, definitely reach out if you weren't aware of this one, and we'll make sure to get you in next time because it was a lot of fun.
Yep, and whether it's this being just an Anaheim calling game or whether we're doing the podcast classic with Chip and Totally Offsides, we try to put these together regularly, especially in summer when we have a bit more time, just to kind of get everyone out, get on the ice, get out and skate. And if you haven't played it at all, let us know. We can try to set you up with some gear. It's a great way to get out and learn to play a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We've literally had people come through who had never played before or hadn't played in years, and we kind of got them hooked on it a little bit again. So that's something to keep in mind. We're not turning anyone away here. If you're an NHL player, if you're someone who's way too good, we might ask you to tone it down a little bit, take it easy on us, but that's about it. Okay, and of course, on a final note here, if you want to follow us on social media, Jake is on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. I'm on Twitter at Felix_Sicard. And, of course, keep it locked in to AnaheimCalling.com, at AnaheimCalling on Twitter. That is going to do it for tonight's episode. We appreciate you listening. We hope that you have a great 4th of July, a happy Canada Day to all of our Canadian listeners. And we will talk to you at the next show. See you then.
Bye.